What's going on, everybody? This is Anthony Rivera, the lead videographer and editor at Blue Box Digital, and welcome to Blue Box Nerd. This is a new channel that we're putting out there where we go deep into movies and TV shows and video games and anything that has to do with nerd culture. We discuss it here in depth. So if that's your kind of thing, get subscribed, hit the like button. And the first show that we're going to go into is The Last of Us. And that's on HBO Max. It's an HBO original series based on the video game, which came out in 2014, I believe. To this day, it is considered one of the best stories in a video game ever. It was very emotionally charged, and it was told very well. From a cinematic standpoint, it was brilliant. It had breathtaking views. It had fantastic action sequences. And so far, from what I've seen on the show, it seems like they're following the source material very, very closely. Obviously, in the game, there's going to be differences between the video game and the TV show / movie adaptation of a video game. But the story of this game was told so well cinematically that I'm glad that the HBO filmmakers decided to use it as a template, because they've already done all the research. The cinematographers that work on this kind of stuff in video games have the same skill set as actual film cinematographers. So the work is there, the source material is there. And again, I understand that we're going to have to change some things because in the game, you have to go through a tutorial, you have to learn the controls, and it's a little bit different medium. So there's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of action sequences that really are just meant to teach you how to play the game, not necessarily develop the story, although they do kind of sprinkle story elements into the tutorial to kind of get you into the story right away, which is awesome. But in a medium like a TV show or a film, it's a little bit different because you only have a certain amount of hours. You don't have unlimited time for the player to just discover everything. You have a very limited amount of time. And I'm glad that HBO decided to do a TV show instead of a movie, because there's a lot of video games that they've tried to adapt to film and they just try to change too much. They try to, because they know that they have to change things up to make it more interesting for an audience of a different medium. But they end up changing too much, and then it loses the essence of what the game really was and why people really love these characters. It kind of becomes more of a fanfare event than an homage to the original source material, which is what I believe HBO is successfully doing for the first time ever. If you guys remember the Mortal Kombat movie, the Doom movie, Assassin's Creed, anytime they've tried to adapt a really, really good video game to film, they always drop the ball. They try to change too much. Like I said, they try to, give it its own little flair or its own little spin for the audience. But I believe that when somebody works on a video game, even though it is a video game, it is being approached as a film, is being approached as a storytelling tool, just an interactive one. So when you take out that interactive element and you put it on the screen for people to passively enjoy, not only do you have to change certain things, but you also have to embellish and kind of go into a lot more detail and enrich the story, which is what I believe HBO is successfully doing here. Is they're enriching the story. They're giving us pieces of the video game that we never got to see, even though that's a longer to play the video game. It's a longer storytelling arc. But I believe that because they chose to do it in a TV show format, they have, when you're adapting something to a movie, you only have 2 to 3 hours, to convey the entire story. And sometimes, you have to make sequels like the Harry Potter series because it's not enough. But a TV show format for a story so deep and so involved I think it was a great decision, and I'm glad HBO has got their capable hands on this franchise, and I'm very much looking forward to see where they take this, because so far the production value and the cinematography and the acting and everything is just top notch. So I hope that this continues throughout, and that they don't drop the ball, kind of like they've done with a few other shows and IPs that they've kind of put out there and then gotten a little too confident. I'm not going to mention too many names, but Game of Thrones comes to mind, where they started off with a bang. They were very, very consistent with the source material, which was very well thought out by George R. Martin. And when somebody puts their life into something, their whole entire human effort into this thing, you have to respect that, because a lot of work went into that you coming in as a filmmaker don't know about. So that there are things in the game that kind of need to be there because they're tent poles to the story and what's going to happen in the future. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to jump right into the review of the episode. We're actually going to take it scene by scene by scene. So this is going to be actually a little bit longer of a podcast. But if you're into that kind of thing, again, hit subscribe. I'm going to keep putting out some really, really great content. We're going to start with The Last of Us, but we're going to continue with a lot of other nerd IPs. Game of Thrones comes to mind. I'm actually thinking about rewatching the entire series and doing one of these deep dives. And then going into House of the Dragon and then doing the deep dive of that before season 2 comes out, because I believe that that's another HBO success story, even though there was a little bit of a hiccup towards the end of Game of Thrones there, where they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. But I don't blame HBO for that. I blame the showrunners. So House of the Dragon is actually off to a great start, and if they keep the respect for the source material, which is there, and George gladly or happily is part of the running the show over there. So, we're going to keep an eye on those kind of shows. Another one is Andor. If you guys are into Andor, we're going to do a very, very deep dive into that and a lot more content coming up. So go ahead and get subscribed, hit the like button. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into the first scene of The Last of Us. So this is actually a scene that was not in the video game. This is kind of like a prologue, just to kind of give the audience a bit of an expectation of what this show is really about. It starts in 1968, which is way before the pandemic hits. But these guys are kind of discussing pandemics and the resilience of the human species to withstand pandemics. And he actually makes a really apt comparison. He compares it to war. When you go to war, there's a lot of casualties, there's a lot of death. But in the end, there is a winner and there is a loser. And with pandemics, and viruses and bacteria that makes us sick, we have developed science to combat that. And so far, knock on wood, we've won every time. So that's what he's saying here. The human species always wins against wars like that. And then they kind of keep pressing him a little bit, and it comes out that the only type of pandemic that we really won't be able to survive is a fungal pandemic. So it's not a virus, it's not a bacteria, it's a fungus. And those have the power of controlling minds. There is an actual fungus in the real world that does take over ants and other small insects, and that actually controls them almost like a puppet. It kind of infects their brain with certain chemicals, and it makes them do what the fungus wants them to do. So sometimes it's just moving from one location to another where the fungus can spread its spores more efficiently. Sometimes it's just a change of climate and they just need to move to a different location. It's a lot easier to just control an insect and move than it is for the fungus itself to kind of spread itself through a surface and get to that location. So what he's saying here is that it's not the fungal that kind of fungal infection cannot currently control a human brain, because the fungi have evolved and adapted to live in 94 degrees, nothing higher. So that's why our bodies run a lot higher than that. So that's why it hasn't been able to make that jump. But one of these guys makes a point that if global warming keeps the way that it's going and the climate, increases the temperature of the entire planet, then fungi are going to have to evolve to live in a hotter environment, and then there is that possibility that it will make that jump to human beings. And it just basically ends with him saying that if it does make that jump, then it would be over for us, because it is impossible to come up with a vaccine or a medicine to combat that kind of infection, because it is a very, very complex organism. It kind of foreshadows what's about to happen in the show. It's almost like a premonition, because it takes place in the 60s, 1967, and after the intro, you actually have quite a bit of a time jump. Now, after this scene ends, we get one of the best intros that I've ever seen on HBO. It kind of brings back memories of, it's almost like a mixture of the Game of Thrones intro and the Westworld intro, where things are just getting created and built throughout the intro. But this is actually a fungi that just kind of grows and grows and grows. I have to tip my hat to HBO, because they put a lot of thought and effort into their intros. They understand that it's not just a piece of video to go in between the cold opens and the meat of the show. It has to tell a story, and you're going to see this intro every single time, every episode. So you have to make it mean something. And I think HBO is one of the best at doing this, because every show that I've seen for them has an intro that has a lot of depth, a lot of meaning. For example, this fungus growing bigger and bigger and bigger. In the beginning of the intro, you can see it kind of zooms out, and it looks like the map of the United States. Then it kind of keeps going after that, telling us that it's a worldwide pandemic. Then it cuts to the scene where it kind of just grows, kind of like buildings, and you can see the fungi kind of going into the city and then kind of taking it over, things like that. Here it's kind of building a human head, a human face, letting us know that it's going to make that cross into the human species. All kinds of little hidden meanings, and then at the very end, it kind of culminates with two spores coming out of the ground, one of them being Joel and one of them being Ellie. So, and I look forward to seeing this every episode, and maybe it'll change throughout. I know Game of Thrones and Westworld and some of those other big IPs, they actually changed the intros very, very slightly. House of the Dragon changes depending on the family tree and the families that you're going to see in that episode. So hopefully this one will change a little bit throughout, with some hidden meanings. I love doing deep dives like that. So then, we get right into the meat and potatoes of the story. It jumps into, there's quite a bit of a time jump, which there's going to be another time jump coming up. But this one specifically doesn't happen in the game. And this is actually where the game begins. And it is told from the point of view of Joel's daughter. So that's why we see her first. There's a little bit of character development for her that's not in the game. But just so you guys know, the 2003 was not the time jump that was in the original game. The original game had 2014 as the beginning of the game, because that's the year that the video game came out. But in the show, I guess they wanted the pandemic to happen during 2023, so they started the show a little bit earlier in 2003, which actually brought them some issues in production, because there was a lot of bans and posters and a lot of references in the game from that year, 2014. But now they've had to change it, and I'll point out, there's one where the camera pans up to a clock, and next to the clock is a picture of a president. And in 2003, the president is George W. Bush. So that's who we see. But in the game, it's Barack Obama. So it kind of, those little bit of changes. I'm going to put a link down in the description where there's a very, very good comparison. Somebody went through and actually did a lot of digging for little Easter eggs in this scene that are just nods to the game. So they did a very good job. So if you guys want to see that, link is in the description below. Now, when it cuts to Joel's daughter and she's kind of waking up, this is where the game actually begins. You know, it kind of throws you into her room is almost identical. Now, this scene is special because they give you a little bit more background of their relationship together, him and his daughter. So we open with her in her room. She kind of wakes up, knocks on Joel's door, tells him, you know, he needs to get up. It's his birthday. And she runs down to the kitchen to make him breakfast. And, you know, this kind of character development is very crucial to what the rest of the story will become, because his relationship with his daughter is one that he treasured. It kind of shapes who he is as a person. Now, there's a part in this scene that kind of caught my eye is when he goes to, you know, he finishes his breakfast, he goes to get up, and then he goes to look for his watch. You know, he pulls up his wrist almost as if he's going to look at the time. And then he slaps his wrist almost like saying, oh man, I forgot I don't have my watch on. And you can see that she notices, and she runs into his room to get his watch, and she decides that she's going to get it fixed for his birthday. Although she kind of steals his money a little bit. But she does confess later, and she does say she's an honest thief. Now, the knife, when she picks up the knife, she looks at it, and then she puts it back. So I don't know, that might come in a little bit later. I was listening to the podcast, the official podcast of the show that HBO puts out, and they were talking about this entire episode and how it's littered with little Easter eggs and things that the showrunners are going to pay off in the future, and later on in the season, maybe even season 2 if they continue the story of The Last of Us Part 2, which is also a great story. But here we actually meet the neighbors, which will become a bigger part of the story a little bit later. But here we kind of observe that the lady has a hard time moving. She can't really move on her own. She's almost paralyzed. He has to even shove some of the bread in her mouth. You know, those biscuits. He just shoves them in her mouth. We also learned that one of these guys is a combat veteran. It doesn't really specify who it is. I'm thinking it's Tommy because it's his truck, but it does say Operation Desert Storm, which was right after 9/11. So I'm assuming it's Tommy, but it could be Joel. Now it cuts to her at the school. She's at the school, and here's where it shows the president up by the clock. So here is where we get George W. Bush. But then we see her kind of writing on her notebook, just taking some notes on what the teacher's saying. But then there's a reflection that kind of hits her and it catches her eye. And looking over to the person, you can see that the person is actually not fidgeting as someone who would normally cast this kind of a reflection. They would just be fidgeting, but that looks more like a twitch. And I was doing a bit of research on the cordyceps, which is the virus that takes over in this show. And the first stage of infection is the what they call the twitching stage. They actually call it the trembling stage, which is the first stage that cordyceps, whenever it infects the ants, they just do a little bit of a twitch. They don't have a lot of control over their limbs, so they start losing control over their limbs, and they start twitching a little bit, so that's why it's called that. In the game, they equate this phase of infection to the runners. These are the ones that are not very infected just yet. They're just starting to get infected, so they're still very human-like in form. Their faces still have expression, but they are out there, they are being controlled, and they are there to spread the virus or the infection. So this, from a filmmaker standpoint, this tells me that this kid is probably infected already, just doesn't really know it yet, even though his hand is kind of twitching out of control there. And, she notices, but, it doesn't really faze her that much. And then the bell rings, so she just kind of forgets about it and walks out. So then, she just hops on the bus. She's on her way home. And then this is where she actually stops by a clock shop to get the watch repaired. And they have a little cute exchange of, he tells her it's going to be $20 to fix it. And she's like, that's it? So he's like, okay, 30, and they kind of laugh it off together. And then we get the cliche emergency vehicles kind of rushing to the scene of some unknown emergency, the obligatory, post-apocalyptic scene that has to happen before any outbreak of any virus. So then, the couple shuts down their store, telling her to go home. Super confusing. You can tell that something is very wrong, but they ask her to leave and go home immediately. And then this is a cute little thing here. I'll pause it there. I thought it was really cool that when they put the blinds down, it actually shows the clock that was there the whole time. Now, I don't know if this specific time, which looks like it's about 3:42 or 3:43, might come in a little bit later, but we'll keep an eye on that. Now, this is also different from the show. After that, she actually goes to her neighbor's house. In the game, it is the neighbors that actually get infected first. So this is kind of like bringing us. This is an example of them kind of embellishing on what was in the game. Kind of giving us a little bit more backstory. Although the characters kind of change a little bit, because in the video game, the one that's infected is Jimmy. It's a guy. But here it turns out that the person that starts twitching is the old lady that was unable to move just a few scenes ago. So here's when we start to see a little bit of movement coming from the old lady. I don't think it really explains where she got it from, but it turns out she is actually the first one to be infected. Now, in this scene, she's looking through the bookshelf and she finds a movie, which we will see the cover of a little bit later. And this is also a nod to the game. It's actually mentioned a few times in the franchise, once in the first game and then a couple times in the second game, where this is actually Joel's favorite movie. And I'm glad they kind of got into that deep of a detail. So then she goes to leave. She looks over, and then the dog is kind of just staring at the old lady like there's something wrong. And in real life, they actually use dogs to detect early signs of cancer and any other quite a bit of other infections and things and ailments, and dogs are very attuned to that. And if there's something wrong, they're usually the first ones to notice, is because they're very attuned to body language and they sense any little change in behavior or anything like that. So they are very attuned to us more than we really realize. And this is from a cinematic standpoint, it's the dog telling us that there's something wrong with this lady. I'm gonna keep an eye on her just in case. And as soon as she steps outside, you can hear in the background there's jet planes coming, and then they do a very, very low flyover over her head, three fighter jets, which tells me that things are escalating quite quickly. It's just not exactly in the location where she's at, but there's something going on pretty big somewhere. Now, this is something that caught my eye a little bit. It says that she locked the door for the first time in a long time, and it kind of surprised him that she did that, which kind of tells me that they're usually kind of carefree. They don't really worry about anybody breaking in or anything. They're usually just kind of living their lives, and they never lock their door and there's nothing of danger, but you can see that there's something a little bit off because of that. And then, after a little bit more character development, she finally gives him his his birthday present. And this is where she admits that she's an honest thief. She doesn't just steal. She literally just used it to fix the watch. This scene is almost word for word directly from the game. They change very little in it, and it's because it works so well. Their exchange here tells us a lot about their relationship, how close they are, and the hidden nods to there's a lot of love here. I don't think they ever talk about so there's the movie there. I don't think they ever talk about what happened to the girl's mom in the game, but in the show they definitely don't. So it's just Joel, his daughter, and then Uncle Tommy that lives with them. But you can tell, it's the family that they created, and it's the family that they love each other very much. And here you can see the closeness of Joel and his daughter, and at the core of what this story is, I know there's a lot of fungal infection and spreading, and the types of infections that are happening out there. But at the core of the story, at the very, very core, it's the story of a father and his love for his kids, and in this case, is his daughter. So in a lot of ways, the relationship that he has with his child defines who he is. And you're going to see after this scene specifically how much of a change Joel really goes through. So she gives him the movie. It's Curtis and Viper 2. It looks like a cheap action flick. It's one of those like you just put in just to laugh at it. And I guess him and his daughter have been talking about this movie, and she finally got a hold of it, and they're going to watch it.
Don't fall asleep.
Of course I won't. It's too riveting.
I think that's funny because I actually tell my kids that all the time when we sit down to watch movies together. I always tell them, don't fall asleep. And what ends up happening is that they fall asleep. But it's not the movie that they're watching, is the fact that they're watching it together. That's what means the most, at least to him. I'm sure to her too. But that's what means the most, is just that they're watching it together. And you can see immediately after she's completely asleep on his lap, and that just it goes to show you how close they really are, how much trust she has in him, that she just falls asleep as soon as he gets home. She feels safe. So then in the game it cuts from there to his daughter waking up in the middle of the night. But here it kind of goes into a little bit more detail about what happened. It looks like Uncle Tommy got arrested because there was someone at the bar that just started swinging on the waitress. And my son actually pointed this out, that it wasn't a random act of violence. It was actually someone that apparently was infected and got very violent towards the waitress, and then Uncle Tommy had to kind of step in, and he was the one that was unfortunately arrested because he was fighting in a public area. But on first watch, I didn't really pay too much attention to that, but then my son kind of pointed out that, hey, maybe he was infected and he just couldn't control his arms, and he just started twitching and swinging and got very, very angry and very violent, and that's another sign of infection. So here you can see that he actually picks up his daughter and puts her in bed, kind of covers her up, makes sure she's okay. And the time is 11:03. And in the very next scene, you can see that it's already 2 a.m. It's after 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you hear some explosions in the background. And this is where the action starts. This is where you actually, in the game, you actually wake up as her, and then you take control of her. So you're actually playing the game as Joel's daughter. So this is another scene that was actually taken almost immediately or almost directly from the game. And it's actually where we find out that everything has gone to shit, and it's It's the situation is a lot more dire than everyone thought. Now here in the living room, there's quite a few nods to the game. Everyone will recognize the guitar there because we've seen those of us that have played the game know what the guitar is. Joel actually carries one with him on the trip that they go on together, and he teaches Ellie how to play it. Which I'm assuming was something that him and his daughter had in common as well, which is the reason why they put the guitar there. And also the soccer ball. The soccer ball on the left-hand side of her is also a nod to the game, because in the game, in her room, there is a picture of her and a couple of other soccer buddies. So it looks like she actually plays soccer. So I'm glad they kind of paid attention to those kind of details, and they put little Easter eggs in there for us. The first thing that everybody thinks about is, let's just watch the news. If there's something going on, the news will tell us. But now the neighbor's dog comes and scares the hell out of her. So then she realizes that something's wrong. So then she starts kind of walking towards the neighbor's house. And then she sees this huge helicopter just flying over. And, more explosions in the background. And now she's starting to realize that there is something seriously wrong here. So she tries to take the dog back to the neighbor's house. And then that's when, she realizes that there's something seriously wrong. When she walks into the kitchen and she steps over all that blood, she realizes that, the old lady that she had seen just a few hours ago is now, it looks like eating her two caretakers. And then this is also when we make the terrifying discovery that these things can actually run, and they can run really fast, which is a huge difference from other zombie genre video games and TV shows that we're so used to, because they kind of walk at a very slow pace because their muscles have been atrophied. But here that's not the case. The fungal infection only affects the brain. The muscles stay intact, and it keeps the host alive. So it can run, it can climb. It's a very intelligent, very complex infection. Then we get to a scene that's going to be repeated a few times in the show and in the game. And it's where Joel is faced with a very tough decision. He has to kill someone for the protection of himself and his family. And here we get the reaction of his daughter. She kind of looks at him and says, "You killed her." It's almost like she can't believe that her dad is capable of killing someone. But under the dire circumstances, the fact that he's able to do that to protect her, she's very conflicted right now, in my opinion. And then I think this is a very revealing scene as well, when they completely turn around and then they see the lady just getting up, like nothing had happened. And then I think that's when she realizes that there's something not right happening here. This is another scene that was taken directly from the game. This pickup truck sequence was shot almost identical to the game. It's still being told from the point of view of the girl, which is why we're looking at the guys in the front from the back. And in the game, you can actually look around while all of this is happening. But here we get some locked on scenes. And this is where it's revealed that it is an infection. It has hit the major cities around the world, and where people are congregated, and it's pretty much destroyed everything, or infected quite a bit of people, which kind of makes her question: are we infected? Like, is this going to happen to us? And then Joel very adamantly says, "No, we're not infected," and she's like, "Well, how do you know?" And then he says, "I just know, we're not infected. We're going to keep going." This scene also shows the level of self-preservation that Joel is willing to go to, because he's faced with another decision where, there's another truck with another family that has broken down, and they have a child. And Uncle Tommy, instinctively starts to slow down the truck to let them, come up to the truck and tell him what's going on. And he says, "What are you doing? Keep going." It's a matter of preserving us, our family unit. And then, Uncle Tommy immediately goes, "They have a child." And his response is very powerful. It says, "So do we." So he is laser focused on protecting his daughter and his family nucleus, his little family that he's created between the three of them, to the point of exclusion of everyone else. It's everybody for themselves now. So then you can see by the level of traffic that it's a known fact now. Like, everybody's trying to get out, everybody's out for themselves. So everybody's trying to evacuate, get away from there, all at the same time, which is pretty realistic. It's something that could happen. Everybody's trying to escape at this point, and they try to cut through a field because these guys know the land pretty well. So they cut through the field to some back road that the police are not blocking yet. And again, this scene is almost identical to the video game. It's almost word for word. It changes very, very slightly. This is a nod to the game here, because here is where the truck actually gets knocked over and they get into an accident. But here it's kind of a fake where they let them keep going for a little bit, but the same outcome still happens. And it was shot very, very similar to the show, where it's just like a pivoting camera in the back seat. So it gives you like kind of like a point of view of what from the girl's point of view, how this world is literally going to shit overnight. And here you see the airplane crashing, which doesn't happen in the game, and then one of the engine parts actually is the one that causes the truck to crash and roll over. So then the truck rolls over. Everyone's running. There's people on fire. She looks out and there's people getting eaten. It's just absolute pandemonium outside. And then she realizes that she twisted her ankle, so she can't really support any weight on it. Then Joel realizes that he's gonna have to pick her up and carry her from this point on. So that's what he does without even thinking about it. And they see, people eating each other. He tries to shield her from the horrors happening around them, and he can't, because it's everywhere. She has no choice but to look at what's happening. So this scene is also in the game, almost identical. They run through the restaurant. And it shows how fast these guys really are, and they don't, the fungus doesn't really care about their host per se. They don't feel any pain or anything. So they throw themselves, and they almost get caught until someone shoots the infected, and then they have a little bit of a break. But, here comes one of the most gut-wrenching scenes in video game and cinema history. You can't even hear what the soldier is talking to or what he's hearing, but all you can tell is his responses. And just from his responses, you can tell that, I think due to the fact that she was hurt, her ankle was hurt, they couldn't take a chance at her being infected, so he was actually ordered to execute them on site.
Sir, we are not sick! I'm sorry.
And the guy is just about to execute Joel as well when he gets a bullet to the side of the face. But unfortunately, the first couple of shots not only hit him in the watch, which saved his hand from being hurt, but another bullet found its way into her abdomen.
Please don't.
And you can tell even he was grazed a little bit on his on the side of him there. He was grazed by a bullet as well, so he was grazed by the same bullet that went through her. So it went through her first, and then it skinned him on the side. Just hearing her take her last few breaths is just heartbreaking.
I know
As a father myself, this scene just broke me. You know, it's just to lose your own child, and especially in that manner, it changes you. You know, it makes you a different person. The love that you felt for this person is now gone instantly. They will no longer be a part of your life. It's heart-wrenching, you know, from a parent's perspective. And his cry for help to Tommy is just, it wrenches your heart, and, you know, it just grips it, and the pain that this man is going through right now, and the look of helplessness on Uncle Tommy's face, like he knows that she's gone. It's just a matter of time, and there's nothing they can do for her at this point. And it is just the look of pure sadness and grief before it even hits Joel, before the grief even hits Joel. Oof. Yeah, every time I watch that scene, I get heartbroken all over again. And then, you know, we get that 20-year jump into the future where, you know, it goes into a world where the spores are just part of everyday life now. You know, it's everywhere. It's spread so much that the majority of the human race has been infected and or killed in the process, and the survivors are very few and far between, hence the name of the game, The Last of Us. And then, you know, we really get to see the devastation firsthand where, you know, it looks like, at least from this scene here, it looks like there is a quarantined area where, you know, it has surveillance, it has aerial surveillance, it has wall built around it. But everything around the wall is just completely destroyed, leveled in a way that it looks like a war zone. Harping back to the speech in the first scene, or the first shot of the show, it looks like a war zone. It looks like this city was actually intentionally destroyed to try to combat the outbreak of the virus, and the walled off area is the only area where humans can still live away from the devastation and the infection that's around them. This is another area where I salute HBO for staying as much as they can true to the original, because the cityscape, everything, every little detail from the game they were able to bring over to the TV show, and I love them for that. You know, it's as a game player, it gives me a lot of confidence in their storytelling abilities. Now we're introduced here to this militant group called Fedra. They are in this post-apocalyptic future, the organization that is in charge of law enforcement. So the Fedra has pretty much taken over this quarantined area where there's still survivors, and kind of taken over it in a way that is very authoritarian, very oppressive, very ruthless. You know, they don't care about humans as much as they probably should, because of their extreme measures to contain this infection. Sometimes it can border on the oppressive. But here you can see the cordyceps is the virus of choice of the show and the video game. That's the one that made the jump to humans. So here they give us a little bit of information about the cordyceps. It's funny because some of these signs actually look very similar to what we saw during the COVID pandemic, when everything was new. People were still making signs and please wear your mask and that kind of thing. This reminds me a lot of that, because it says you have to report signs of cordyceps infection, which include coughing, slurred speech, muzzle spasms, and mood change, which we kind of talked about before a little bit, where it makes you spasm, it makes you really angry, you know, it makes you act irrational, you're slurring your speeches, you're coughing. Those are all signs of the infection. On the right there, we actually see a little bit of a timeline, which explains to us a little bit of how fast and how this infection moves through the human body once you're infected. So the first the first step there, which happens within 5 to 15 minutes, is you start showing signs in the neck, face, and head. That's why some of them have a lot of, even though they don't have a bite on their neck, they still, they pull down their jackets, and you can see that the infection is showing through parts of the neck, the head, and face. The second step, which is from 2 to 8 hours, that's when the torso, the arms, the shoulders, and the hands start showing some of those bruising and some of the signs of infection. The third stage is when it gets to your legs and your feet, and that's within 12 to 24 hours. So you could see it. I mean, it moves fairly quickly through the human body. And then once it completes the leg and the feet, then, you're fully infected, and then, you have to report to the authorities immediately. And then, it cuts right to a scene with another child, this time from the point of view of the child as well. But this time she sees more of a motherly figure. She's obviously part of Fedra, which makes her a little bit intimidating, but, she's more of a motherly figure. She's there to comfort him, make him feel like everything's going to be okay. Even though we see him getting tested very quickly, after entering the facility. And once he tests positive, it's very, very obvious that they are going to act very quickly to get rid of the virus. So I love how visually, that red light comes on, he's infected. It's a very quick visual cue to let her know that he's been infected, but obviously he doesn't see that. He just really focused on her face and her comforting demeanor. And then when it cuts back to her, you can kind of see in her reaction that, she almost feels sorry for the kid because she knows what has to happen next. Now, in the case of adults that get infected, we'll see a little bit later that they actually just get plain executed, just a bullet to the head. But with kids, they're a little bit more, humane. They give them the lethal injection, and just literally hold their hands and comfort them while they pass away. Which leads us to the scene where we see Joel again. Here, 20 years older, 20 years in the future from the day that he lost his daughter. These guys are just burning bodies. It's just like a burn pit. So here we see that Joel is actually part of this walled off community in Boston, where it's ruled by Fedra. Now here we can actually see that this is the kid that we were seeing before, that is now dead. But the way that Joel just kind of throws him down into the fire pit, you can see that he is a different man. He is not the same Joel that we met in the beginning of the show. Where he's warm, he's loving. Now he's more cold, he's more distant. He's different. Here we see another couple signs. We see the same sign of the report infection like we did before, but we get another sign where you can see that they actually enforce a curfew. So from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., which is basically all night, or all the dark hours, anyone on the streets without Fedra approval is subject to immediate arrest. And we know that some of these guys abuse their power, so we can actually see some executions for breaking these curfew hours. Now here's when we get introduced to the firefly symbol, which is a radical rebellion actively against Fedra. They're for freedom. They're always fighting Fedra. They're the rebels, if you will, in the Star Wars universe. So this is their symbol. They graffiti it everywhere just to mark their presence. And it just instills fear in Fedra because they know that the rebels are nearby. Then, Joel is seen walking into a square full of people getting ready to witness a public execution, medieval style, actually, by hanging. And it's for, you can hear the crimes being read out loud, and it's escaping after curfew and harboring fugitives and things like that. Stuff that an authoritarian regime would execute people for. Now he has some sort of unwritten or unsaid agreement with this guy, because all they do is make eye contact, and then they kind of scurry away to a hidden location, and they seem to be trading money or cards for drugs, which means that Joel has actually gotten to the point where he has to sell drugs to make money. And in this case, he's actually selling them to a federal officer for some money and some cigarettes. And then they introduce us to Tess, which is, in my opinion, Joel's partner in this future post-apocalyptic future. Just somebody that he's found as company, as a partner, as probably has a relationship with her. I don't think they really say what their relationship is together, but they're always together. They're looking out for each other. And in the game, they actually just show them together arguing about why she got beat up. But here you can actually see that it was just somebody that she tried to buy a truck battery from, gave him the money, and then he sold it to someone else for more money. And she was just confronting them about it, and she just got beat up. And they're debating whether or not to let her go or keep her and kill her, and they're just deciding what to do with her right now. So she actually does talk them down into letting her go, but before they actually get a chance to do that, there's an explosion next to the building, and then it kind of blows a hole in the wall where she can escape. And then she realizes that the explosion was actually against Fedra. So this tells me that the Fireflies are actually on the attack. So because of that, then Fedra is forced to act with violence. So it turns into basically a brawl in the middle of the city against, the Fireflies against Fedra, and then poor Tess is stuck in the middle of it. So she has to choose a side to go to. She decides to go to the Fedra side with her hands up, but they still treat her like a damn criminal. They don't know if she's a Firefly or not, so they still arrest her and take her away. And then we get to the meat of the story, and then we meet one of the most important characters in the game, and that's Miss Ellie. Here she's chained up, so you can see she's being held against her will. She angrily kicks over her food, which means that she really doesn't want to be there, but they're still, following protocol. They're asking her, count to 10 and hold out your hand. And we later find out that this is how they test her cognition, her intelligence, to see if she's being affected by this virus. And she says that her name is Veronica. She says that it's the same as before, it hasn't changed, and I don't know why you keep asking me these stupid questions, blah, blah, blah. And then you see the Firefly logo, which means that the Fireflies are the ones holding her. Now here you can see that Joel goes to see a messenger. Looks like communications is not as easy to accomplish as it was in the beginning. Because of the loss of technology, but this guy seems to have all the radios and all the communication equipment needed to get a message out or get a message in, which I believe Joel sees as a great opportunity to get some information. So he goes to see him, he bribes him with some cigarettes, and he gets a little bit of information. So he's trying to see if he has had any communication with Uncle Tommy. Apparently Uncle Tommy has been missing for some time now. And we're just trying to see if they can locate where he is, or if they've heard of him, or any communications that have come out about him or with him. So then, he kind of asks him, where's this tower? Like, I'm going to go to the freaking tower and find out for myself if my brother's okay. You can see by his expression that there's quite a bit of stuff out there, not just the infected. There's groups of people that have become cannibals, and it's just absolute chaos out there. And he's worried for Joel's safety if he does try to leave the confines of the walls and go out into the wilderness and fend for himself. So then he kind of goes back into his house and starts plotting his journey to Wyoming, which is where this radio tower is, which is, from Boston to Wyoming is quite a bit, quite a ride. But he pulls out all his old maps and things and tries to plot his journey ahead to see if his brother's still alive. You can see like he's struggling. He doesn't want to lose another loved one, so he's just drowning his sorrows. And then this is where we also see that the watch was actually hit by one of the bullets and cracked the watch. That he still holds the watch because it has a lot of significance to him now that his daughter got it fixed for him, and it kind of reminds him of that moment. So then he kind of passes out. Then the next morning he realizes that Tess is actually there, and she's been hit. She's been punched, like she has bruising on her face, and she just kind of brushes it off, saying, "Hey, it's just some guys jumped me. Probably shouldn't have said something." But he immediately goes into father mode and just kind of tries to take care of her, and tries to heal the wounds, and he goes into dad mode. So then we learned that the reason why they needed the battery so bad is because they have a truck that works but doesn't have a battery, and that's the truck that he wanted to take to go find Uncle Tommy. So then together, they kind of concoct a plan to go, get their battery back. They want that battery for the truck, and they're going to get their money back, and they're so hurt about being betrayed by this guy that now they're just out for revenge. So they're going to go hunt this guy down. They're going to get their battery, and they're going to get their truck, and they're going to get the hell out of there, or at least that's the plan. Then we cut to a scene with the Fireflies. This is actually in their headquarters. You can see they're not, super militia. They're just kind of rebels, just made of everyday people that are just sick and tired of Fedra and their ways of doing things. And, they have a very loose power structure. One of them actually starts to question, like, why are we doing this? And fun fact about this actress, the Marlene actress, she was actually the one who played Marlene in the game. So it was fantastic that they were able to get her to reprise her role in the TV show, because she was fantastic in the game. So then, it's revealed that the Fireflies are actually leaving that quarantine zone, which they call QZ in the show, the quarantine zone. They're leaving the quarantine zone. And, she gets pretty upset because she thinks that they're abandoning the fight. They were like, we've been fighting here for a long time, and now we're just going to up and leave. But then there's something that's in that piece of paper that explains why they're having to leave. And she immediately accepts it and, says, anything you need, I'm there. So later on, we'll find out what is actually on that piece of paper. So then, Tess and Joel go down, and, they pay some people for information to see where this guy is. And, he's kind of approached by one of the, I'm assuming is a religious person, which is just trying to spread some of their religion to him, and he's just not having it. Then, we cut back to Ellie, and Ellie is seen in the horrible conditions that she's being kept in. There's a leak, there's water, there's mold, she's tied to a heater, and she just can't move, and she's basically in solitary confinement here, and you can tell that she's starting to even question her own sanity when she, kind of gets pissed off and just throws herself down to the ground. But then to herself, she starts counting the same cognitive test that the Fireflies gave her. She's doing that in her own head just to kind of, a little bit of insight on Ellie. Maybe she thinks, hey, maybe I am going a little crazy. Maybe there is something going on inside me, and I just have to keep myself on my toes by running this test, this self-test, to see if this infection is, going. So then Marlene kind of slides her backpack, and she immediately pulls out her knife. She's a knife fanatic, so she always keeps a knife in her backpack, and you can see that Marlene really doesn't care. She just kind of completely ignores her and just goes to sit down next to her to kind of relate. And Ellie sees that this is a different interaction from the ones that they've had before, and the fact that she's holding a knife now, she has a little bit more power. She has a little bit more say in how this conversation goes. And the fact that, Marlene is trusting her enough to sit next to her, even though she's holding a knife, tells her, this might be the end of my captivity here, and maybe I should, take it down a notch. Now here they have a pretty interesting interaction where Ellie is completely disarmed. She puts away the knife. She realizes that she's not in real danger, and then she even asks, is it going to happen now? Am I going to die? Are you going to kill me? Because she's seen what's happened to people that have tested positive for this virus. They get executed. So she's pretty much asking, is it going to happen now? Am I going to die? And she's like, nope, you're not going to die. So this is actually when it is revealed that Marlene actually does know who she is, and she tells her real name, which is Ellie, even though she's been saying that it's Veronica this whole time. And not only that Marlene is the one that dropped her off at the orphanage when she was a baby to help her survive. Even Ellie questions, like, are you my mom, or what's going on here? She said, no, I'm not your mom. Just saved your life, And we'll get a lot more of her backstory, hopefully later on in the season. Now here they mention a name that for game players, they will recognize, Riley. And I no spoilers, but this has a very big significance in Ellie's life. And when she calls Marlene a terrorist, she said terrorist. Was she a terrorist? And then that kind of changes her question as to what it means to be a Firefly. And we cut back to Joel and Tess, and it's raining outside. They're breaking into this building. It looks like they've actually found the location of this man that tried to steal their money and tried to trying to swindle them out of the car battery. And you can see they're getting ready for battle. So.
Ready?
They know something's about to go down. So then, they're kind of walking through the building, and then they stumble upon this this infected that apparently has been infected for quite some time, and the host itself looks like it's died. The human body is completely dead and decomposed, but then the fungal infection is still trying to spread itself. Is still trying to find another host, so it kind of spreads itself out throughout the wall there. This is identical, straight out of the game, almost looks perfectly as if it were game footage. They did an excellent job on these effects. And they both kind of question, do you think he came down here when he was infected and died, or did he get infected down here? Which kind of raises the question, like, what else is creeping and crawling down here in the sewers? The game takes place in a lot of sewers, a lot of, it's a stealth game, so you basically have to stay pretty much hidden from these creatures throughout the whole game. So there's a lot of these sewers and tunnels and things that you encounter. So hopefully they kind of stay true to that. So then they get to the floor where they were going, and then they start smelling gunpowder in the air. And then, Tess breaks through one of the hidden passageways, and when she realizes the guy that they were looking for is actually just shot in front of them. So that looks like there was a fresh firefight here not too long ago where, the Fireflies came in and they killed him and his entire crew. Then they find the battery that they've been looking for. And then they realize that it, even though it used to be a battery, it is no longer a working battery. So it was all for naught. He was just a con artist. He was just trying to con people out of money for a battery that never really existed. And it sounds like somebody's whimpering, so they kind of go to investigate, and then they realize that the person whimpering is actually Marlene. Her and her cohorts are actually the ones that shot up the battery man and his crew members. I guess the Fireflies were after the same thing. They were trying to buy a battery. This is where Joel gets introduced to Ellie for the first time. He's kind of walking towards Marlene, and Ellie kind of jumps out and tries to attack him, and then obviously Joel, being a combat person, he kind of just completely deflects the attack. And once Ellie's on the floor, he points her gun at her. And then this is a very interesting interaction, because then this is where the trajectory of the story of the journey really changes, because now we realize that there was no battery. There is no man with the battery anymore. So that entire thread of the story is now completely gone. And Marlene has to, kind of make a ploy to that, that desperation that he has to find his brother, and her need to get Ellie to safety just kind of come together in this scene. And, this is when Ellie just kind of gets tacked on to the Joel trio. So then they have a little bit of an exchange there where, they're trying to tell them, yeah, we were trying to buy the battery, but the guy had bad merchandise and the deal just went sideways. And, they kind of confess that they were after the same battery. So they were both kind of swindled by the same person. And it's interesting because whenever Ellie looks at the knife, she tries to go for it, he immediately points his gun at her. And Marlene's immediate reaction is, don't point the gun at her, point it at me, which kind of threw Joel off a little bit, because that's not something Marlene would normally do. But there's obviously something special about this kid that you can't really, just the thought of her dying is enough for Marlene to kind of sacrifice herself in a way for Ellie. So that's what starts to change Joel's mind a little bit. And then he realizes the importance of this child and the gravity of the situation that he's found himself in. So I think at this point, Marlene realizes that because she's shot, her friend is shot, most of her people are dead. She no longer has the battery for her truck. So it's going to be almost impossible to get Ellie out of the city. So she sees an opportunity. They both want the same thing, but for different reasons. So she decides to just recruit Joel because she knows what he's capable of, or what they are capable of as a couple, Joel and Tess. So she decides to put Ellie's life in their hands because they are capable hands, and she kind of bribes him into accepting the offer with hopes that, once you get there, you're going to get your truck and then you're going to be able to finish your mission, but you're going to have to finish my mission first. So that's the kind of conundrum that she's putting him in, and he really has no choice because he's very desperate to find his brother, and all other options have failed at this point. So then the journey begins. So this is where the game really gets going. This is when them as a group get out of the city. It doesn't necessarily go as they planned. So then, they head back to their apartment, which is currently their hideout. And, they start talking it over. It's like, there's something obviously special about this girl. They wouldn't have sacrificed their entire mission for her. I love this scene because it not only shows the kid and her curiousness, her ability to look at an environment in a way that an adult can't. And then, in this specific scene, the adults are actually on the outside of the door talking about her. So it really does feel like a parent situation where the parents are arguing about the child, and then the child is just left to be with their thoughts, in this room full of things that she's never seen before. House, and she finds this book next to a radio, and she finds a little note inside of it, and inside of it says B/F. It's the B/F. It stands for the radio station that they usually listen to, is Ben and Frank. And on that radio station, they have a code. So if it's a song being played that's from the 60s, and that means nothing's wrong. If it's from the 70s, that means new stock, which I'm assuming it's the new batch of drugs or something like that. And then if it's from the 80s, there's a red X, which, anybody with some common sense knows that a red X is bad. So we're about to see that kind of play out. Now, this is another scene that's straight out of the video game. They kind of have to kill some time to leave the city with a little bit of darkness above them. So then they're just chilling here, and he falls asleep. And in the game, whenever he wakes up, she says the same line.
You mumble in your sleep.
So they kind of chat about his competency and his ability to find his way outside of the wall, and he kind of just brushes it off, say, yeah, I got this, and I know where I'm going. And then she decides to test him. She says, hey, the radio came on while you were asleep, and then it kind of perks him up, and he asked her what kind of song was playing, and then I guess she knows that there was a song from the 80s, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. And then she sees his reaction, and she realizes that it is something bad. So she says, hey, crack your code. 80s means bad. And then she kind of reveals that she was just lying, just to kind of get his reaction and just kind of figure out what that code meant. And so begins their journey. This is where they actually make it outside of the wall. Even though there's federal soldiers everywhere, and you can hear them over the loudspeakers saying the curfew's in effect to curb infection and insurrection. So there's more of the authoritarian government kind of controlling the people and not wanting them to do any sort of uprising. So then they actually do make it outside of the wall, and Ellie being a kid, she's never been outside the walls. She's just overcome with emotion. She's very excited about being outside these walls, which is not allowed. But she's out there, and, she stands up and she yells it to the world. And then they have to kind of remind her, hey, we're not supposed to be here. So, kind of keep it quiet.
Let's go.
And you can tell even here, Joel is kind of second-guessing himself, second-guessing the whole mission. This kid that's completely reckless has no clue what's happening, and then Joel knows even less. So he doesn't even know why he's doing this, but he's still questioning it, but he's still going through with it anyways. And this is another aspect of the game that I think was faithfully recreated for the show, is the stealth aspect. There's a lot of stealth that has to happen, not only against the infected, but also against the federal soldiers. Which are going to be a constant nuisance in this game here, and sometimes even more so than the infected. So the fact that the game is a stealth game, you have to kind of go through it without making too much ruckus. Otherwise, you're probably going to die. So this part of the show really encapsulated that really well. The tension was high. The cinematography was almost identical to the game, and they really did an excellent job here.
Don't move!
Then, they come across a federal soldier, which is, guarding the perimeter of the wall. And, automatically they know that they're going to be either arrested or executed, because they are outside, they are out past curfew, so they're breaking quite a few laws here. So the situation's a little bit more dire than if they would have been caught inside the walls. So as he pulls up his helmet, he reveals that he's the same guy that Joel had an interaction with earlier, the one that he sold the drugs to. So they do have a little bit of a past together, but it's not a happy past. They did have a little bit of contention when they interacted before. So this is not going to end the way that they want it to end. So he says, we're doing this by the book. We're gonna test you guys, make sure you're not infected, and we're gonna whatever by the book means in this scenario, whether it's gonna be execution or arrest, they're gonna be dealt with in Fedra's way. And you can see as soon as it cuts to Ellie, she gets a little nervous because she doesn't like these kind of tests. She knows that she's not gonna pass. First of all, and so a federal soldier is not going to understand that she's immune. He's just going to see the negative test result, and execution is not shortly thereafter. So then Ellie, instinctively she reacts the only way she knows how, and it's by pulling out her knife and causing a scene, and kind of diverting the attention away from her so that they don't realize that she is actually infected. And at this point, Joel doesn't really know either, or Tess. So it's kind of like she was trying to hide the secret from everyone, and the only way that she knew how to divert attention was to do this kind of this kind of action, which puts Joel in a precarious a situation again, which again, he finds himself between a gun and a girl, which is very much like his daughter's age. It reminds him a lot of his daughter, and he's again found himself in between a gun and his surrogate daughter in this case, and he has a completely different reaction than he did in the first time that he found himself in this kind of situation, because the first time he hesitated. We all saw what happened there, so I think the PTSD kind of made him react in a way of self-preservation and to preserve him and his new family that he had made for himself. So then, as we can see, this is playing out completely different. He did have a literal flashback, which, he actually saw the soldier that killed his daughter, and it was a literal flashback, which happens in PTSD patients. They actually do have visualizations of their past trauma. So that's what happened here, and he reacted the way that he wished he could have reacted when the same situation was presented to himself with his daughter. Now, this is very interesting, the way the acting reflects what these characters are going through, because in this scene here, you see Joel completely lose his cool and act instinctively, and in the preservation of him and his. In the first situation, his daughter was actually shocked. She was almost traumatized by the fact that this man was capable of doing something so horrible. But here we see something completely different and a lot more gruesome. I mean, he literally kills this man with his bare fists. And Ellie, instead of being traumatized or being afraid, she's enthralled. She's very much into what's happening here. She likes the fact that someone has this sort of emotion and this sort of protective demeanor that she knows that she's going to be safe with this guy, and the fact that he's willing to put his life at risk and even kill for her is very is very enticing to her. Is very, very reassuring, and she almost likes it. You can see it in her face, like she's enjoying what's happening. That the fact that this guy is actually paying for what he did, and in a very violent and gruesome way, I think speaks volumes of the difference between the two girls, and it kind of signifies their relationship going forward is going to be one of violence, and it's a signal to everyone, watch out for these two. This is also when they realize that she's sick, because the tester is still on the ground, but it actually has a failure light. It has the red flashing light on it, meaning that the test actually failed, meaning that she is infected. So now Joel and Tess are faced with a situation of protecting a girl who they know is infected, not knowing that she is actually immune to whatever virus or infection this is.
Not sick! Look! This is 3 weeks old. Nobody lasts more than a day. Just as look at they old to you. You would have killed me.
Should fucking kill you. When did it happen?
It doesn't matter. You have to trust me. They're gonna catch us if we don't run.
Joel, we gotta move.
So here we see another sign where Fedra kind of posted a warning once you're leaving the confines of the wall, saying that it's a biological contamination area and that you should not proceed. So this kind of foreshadows what we're going to encounter out here, because it is not protected by Fedra, and it's kind of a wild west of crazy out there that they're about to encounter. So then it kind of cuts back to their apartment, and it's almost reminiscent of what they've left behind, that they're probably never going to see again, which is their apartment, their possessions. They're all still there. And while we're actually looking inside their apartment, the radio comes on, and wouldn't you know, a song from the 80s starts playing. So it kind of foreshadows that things have gone wrong, and that is actually where the storytellers leave us, is this final scene of the building knocked over. It's a very iconic scene in the game, It's used in a lot of promotional materials because it's very iconic, where one building kind of fell into another and it just kind of stayed there. So it's kind of overgrown, and you can hear all of the nasties and creepy crawlies that are out there in the background, just waiting for our trio here of adventurers. And that's where the first episode ends, and we're just getting started. This story is absolutely riveting, and it will have you on the edge of your seat the entire time, at least if they stay faithful to the source material, which I really hope they do, and it definitely looks like they're heading in that direction. The guys from Naughty Dog are actively involved in the creation of this show, so that gives me a lot of hope that it's going to be at least honoring the source material, if not following it word for word, which probably wouldn't be the best thing anyway. But we're going to follow it along. This is a great story. This is one of my favorite games of all time, and I'm really, really excited to kind of go through this journey with all of you guys and Joel and Ellie. So if you're not subscribed already, go ahead and get subscribed. Hit like on this if you liked it. If you like these kind of deep dives into TV shows and movies, we're going to be putting out a lot of this stuff in the coming months. Right now, we're obviously doing The Last of Us, but once this first season ends, we're going to do a lot more content of other shows that have actually been out for some time. And then in preparation for some of the upcoming shows like Andor and House of the Dragon Season 2, which is about 2 years away. So we got a little bit more time on that one. But again, thank you for joining us on Blue Box Nerd, and we will see you guys in the next episode.